Hi, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here, and I'm so glad to have the triumphant return of Father Joseph Anthony Kress. He is the campus minister at the University of Virginia, and he's here today to talk to us a little bit about his ministry with those students, a recent retreat that they went on. I talk about a great experience that I had recently in my little walk with the Lord over here. We also play one of our favorite games, Freestyle Preaching, which is, he's way too good at it, which makes me worried a little bit about his real preaching. And then to close out the show, we talk about having conversations with people that we disagree with and being okay with awkward or difficult moments. I hope that you enjoy today's show. If you do, make sure you hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening on any podcast platform or over on YouTube. Thanks so much for being here. Enjoy today's show. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, and usually when I say hello, priest, I'm talking to Father Anthony, but this one has a hyphen with Joseph in front of it. Hello,
Joseph's
Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
How you doing, buddy? What's happening?
Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm doing great.
I think we were chatting a little earlier, and we were like, it's been almost 2 years since I've been on the show, so like let's get it back going. Like let's get the band back together. You know how I mean?
Exactly. You have always been I'm call you in a pinch, and I guess I've either not. Well, I was gonna say maybe I haven't been in the pinch in the last 2 years, but I think when I was in a pinch, I was just like, we're just not having an episode this week, so I just stopped calling you. I broke my streak of like 300 episodes in a row, and then. So it was about 100 episodes ago, about 2 years ago that you were on the show. And I honestly can't believe it. So welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I mean, it really is. I should say it's not that we haven't talked to each other in 2.5 years. Like we've talked to each other, just we haven't been on an episode together. So
right. Yeah,
like
exactly.
just so that people know, it's not like, you're like, oh my gosh, you sound horrible right now. What happened in the last 2 years? It's like, no, we've stayed in contact. We just haven't been on an episode.
We have, but I will. This isn't confession, but I'll confess something to you. I don't think it's a sin, but it might offend you. It's been long enough that I forgot where the hyphen was in your name. I forgot if it was Joseph Anthony Kress or Joseph Anthony Kress. So it has been long enough that I forgot where the hyphen was. But I have refreshed in the last week.
I was thinking about in the last 2.5 years, I was thinking about putting the hyphen just before the name. Just like dash Joseph Anthony Kress, just to mess with you. But no.
Father
it's in
Joseph,
between Joseph and
Anthony Kress.
Yeah. What is happening? No, I remember when I entered the religious life and I took the name Joseph Anthony, I wanted just Joseph, but my novice master said there were too many damn Josephs in the province already, so I had to take something else, and I was quick on my feet. And I was like, what if I added a second name to it? And he was like, well, keep it under 5 syllables. So that's how I ended up with Joseph Anthony. You know how it goes.
That's 8 syllables.
Well,
your name is 8 syllables. What are you talking about?
To cut the last name out of it, Joseph Anthony is 5.
Okay, I think you squeezed one by him there.
Also, for people that don't know, yes, we Catholics are bad at math, and we both have been counting on our fingers this entire time. We're like, what is happening here? Oh gosh, yeah.
Let's see. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Spirit is 8. I almost said it was 7 because Spirit down in Texas is 1, but I guess it's 8. But Trinity is 3. So now 3 equals 8 is what we're saying.
That's exactly what we're saying. Yeah, exactly. 1 and 3, 3 and 8, blah blah blah, whatever. It's all good.
That's how fractions work. If you simplify the fraction 3 and 8, it's 1 and 3. That's how math works. So you are a Dominican. You're a campus minister over at the University of Virginia. And we were going to record this last week, but we didn't because you were getting ready for a retreat with your students. How'd it go?
Yeah. It was fantastic. We sent our students off on a fall retreat. Not sent them off. I went with them and helped lead.
I was about to say,
ship them off. Hey, get out of here, kids. No, it was fantastic. We had our fall retreat this past weekend. It was great, and we focused on the Eucharist, and so we had a collaboration with Dominican sisters. So we had some Dominican sisters come and help lead the retreat with us, and they gave kind of the formation talks, and we did a bunch of adoration, mass, sacraments, a lot of just kind of play, like just had fun playing the minute to win it games, and other free time in the retreat place that we were at is just like a summer campsite that in the off season they host different groups for things, and they were great to us. We had all night adoration, which was fantastic, and the students really loved being able to spend the time with the Lord and grow in intimacy with Him in those ways. So yeah, very happy with the retreat, how it worked out. We had a lot of first year students, which is great. Yeah, everything's going well. Love it.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. It reminds me of when I was in college campus ministry. We went on I can't remember if it was the fall. It was the fall because it was chilly, and the only time it's chilly in Texas is late fall. So we were having a retreat, very similar setup, where it was a summer camp. Where they became a retreat site, almost the exact same kind of thing. And we were on retreat, and we were doing a period of silence. It wasn't a full silent retreat, but it was either 24 hours or like dinner to breakfast. It's one of those things. And there was perpetual adoration throughout the evening. So we all took an adoration night. There's probably 25 of us on this retreat. So throughout the course of the day, we all took an hour. And my hour happened to be, one of the middle of the night hours, that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, something like that. So we were doing the silent time, and like, I've it's been a while since I went on our silent retreat, but when I went on silent retreats once a year, everyone was always surprised to hear like, oh yes, I can be quiet for 24 hours or 32 hours or whatever it is, right? But what was funny is simultaneously as our Catholic campus ministry retreat, there was another retreat going on, and we knew that was going on, but I didn't know who it was. We just weren't interacting with them, right? We had different eating times and whatever. But I was doing my silent holy hour at 1, 2 in the morning, and someone from the other retreat came over, and it was someone that I know that I haven't known in years, and they were like, we're in adoration, so like even they weren't like talking like you and I are talking. They're like, they came up to like, give me one of the side hugs or whatever. And they were like, hey, how are you? Nice to see you. And I stared them in the eye, and I was like, I'm doing great. How are you? Like I broke my silence because I was like, I can't just be a jerk during my silent retreat.
Just like,
like they don't know.
Look
I'm
at
in
them in the eyes
time
and just like say everything you want, just like intent.
Right. You're like,
no.
You're exactly as I remember you, jerk. Like,
yeah, exactly. You didn't talk to me then, and you haven't talked to me now. Fine, I'm done.
Exactly. But no, we had a nice little conversation. It had been years, so we talked for probably 3 to 5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
And then we went about our holy hour and that sort of thing. But it was that when you said you were going on retreat this weekend, that's the memory that I haven't thought of because it was 15 years ago that popped up, and I was like, oh, I hope these kids from your school have a great experience this weekend.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. I think everybody had it and a good experience, and now we're back on grounds and back in the swing of things. So yeah, and with retreats, it's always one of those things that like you can feel good and think everything's great, but it's kind of about the ripple effect after the retreat. It's not so much about what happened on that retreat itself. So I'm excited to see the kind of ripple effect and see how it continues to play out.
That's good. That's good. So did you run the whole thing, or do you have a team with you? Like, what does that part look like? What was your role this weekend?
Yeah, I was a sacramental Pez dispenser. That's my role.
That's 24/7, baby.
You better believe it. Bah, bah, bah. Gotcha. No, I have a really good staff. I'm an associate director here. I have a team of focused missionaries, and like I said, we had 2 Dominican sisters join us as well. So we had a good team that kind of took care of everything, and everybody had their own kind of different areas of the retreat to take care of and to organize and plan and things like that. And my role was the liturgy. So I took care of masses, adoration, confessions, and stuff like that. So yeah, we all just kind of broke it down and said, all right, this is your role. Like, step to it. This is the vision for it, and get after it.
Good. Very good. So I'm always interested because you're on another side of the country than I am, and you're working with different age people than I am. So
Very true.
You said that the theme was the Eucharist. Is that a yearly theme for this retreat, or is that a theme that y'all came up specifically for this one?
No, yeah, that was a specific theme for this year. I think last year we focused on the cross, and we've just done different topics year. We've done like a theology of the body retreat in years past.
Oh, cool.
But this year we kind of just wanted to get back to the basics and really drawing from the experience with the Eucharistic Congress that happened over the summer, saying like, let's actually really focus on the Eucharist. And
that makes sense. That's cool.
It's one of those things too that where the basics, the core elements of the faith can never be repeated too much, right? Like, it's like, this is such a heart of our Catholic faith, is understanding who Jesus is in the Eucharist and how he desires to love us and be with us in the Eucharist, that it's not something that, even if you're like, have no idea what's happening in the Catholic faith, or you're converting to the Catholic faith, like this retreat could be for you and help you. And if you've been a cradle Catholic all your life, been a youth group kid and a campus ministry rat the entire time, like this retreat can be for you too as well. So, I think those kind of core fundamentals of the faith can never be said too often, or they can never be repeated too much. And this was that opportunity to just say like, we're going to focus on the Eucharist. And we've seen a lot of growth in mass attendance here. Our Sunday 9 p.m. mass, we're averaging about 260 to 280 every Sunday at 9 p.m., which is really spectacular. And we'll probably see another 500 students come to the other 6 masses that we have that weekend. And then we've seen a huge growth in our Bible studies. We have about 42 Bible studies happening every week here. And so we wanted to be able to take those students and give them an opportunity to understand something that's really important. We really do want to increase devotion to the Eucharist and help our students, be more comfortable with praying with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, so that when they graduate and move on, that wherever they end up, they feel comfortable and confident in going to a church and sitting in front of a tabernacle or sitting in exposition. And this was an opportunity to do that and talk about it in kind of an in-depth way and give a particular encounter and experience of it, so that they can continue on for the rest of the year and then put those things into practice, whether that is learning how to make like a Thanksgiving after Mass, or learning how to pray in silence in front of the Blessed Sacrament and adoration, like to give them like a really intentional engagement and experience of that on retreat, and then helping them do that throughout the year as well, giving those opportunities too.
I love that. The practicals is very good. Both the reminding of the core tenets of the faith, the reminders of that, but then also like, hey, this is how you do this. I talk all the time about when I was a teenager, I would hear a great talk and I'd be like, oh, the talk was all about the importance of prayer, and I'd be like, okay, I'm inspired to pray, and I'd go home and I'd be like, I don't know what to say, so I would pray for 15 seconds because I knew how to log in and log out, and that's about it. So I love the practicals. My wife and I were at. Our parish does these parish date nights, periodically, maybe 5 or 6 a year, where the married couples and engaged couples are invited to come up to the parish, and we have dinner, and you sit at a table with other married couples, and there's some time for sharing amongst the tables. There's some time for just look at your own spouse and talk about like the talk. There's a talk. There's usually some funny video, Tim Hawkins about marriage, something like that, right? Well, the practicals, we got to a practicals thing last night because it was all about spiritual intimacy within a marriage, which knowing how the background, like working inside the church, my wife works there, then I kind of do, I just don't get paid. I'm just around, and I know that they were looking for somebody to give this talk, and so many people said no, because no couple wants to give the spiritual intimacy talk, right? Well, the people that did, it's they have been influential in my life for many years. He just became a deacon a couple years ago, and she worked in youth ministry. They were perfect, and they're simple country. Like, one's a Texas person, one's a Louisiana person, where I'm like literally those two things. Like, I just vibe with them. Like, I totally connect with them. Totally. And they got to the two things I took away was just they've been married for 30-ish years, 30 to 35 years, I would guess, because they have a kid in the late 20s, and just their love for each other was just so apparent when, like, it's usually assumed, a couple's married that long. You either assume they really love each other or they're just grumpy and they're stuck with each other. Like those are the two types of marriages I see most often,
Yeah.
But then the second thing is they were talking just very simple things. And it made my wife and I rethink things. Cause like my wife typically goes to daily mass a couple of times a week with our kids because she's up and at them very early, getting the kids to school. And then, the kids' school starts at 8 and then they have mass once or twice a week at 8:15. So like I'm not awake or just waking up. So I can't be there, so we were like, okay, my wife is doing this spiritual thing. So like one of the suggestions was just, hey, you should go to daily mass together, which is a suggestion that we have heard multiple times, but we just never pursued it because if I go, it's going to be at 5:30. If she goes, it's going to be at 8:15. And we were like, just for whatever reason, hey, there's a noon mass. I'm less busy at work on Thursday and Friday. You're less busy at work on Thursday and Friday. That's typically when we go on a lunch date together. Why don't we go to mass and then do the lunch date? And it's this revolutionary thing that's so freaking simple. It just took somebody reminding us of the simplicity of things to be like, duh, just meet in the middle, you doofuses. And that's what we're doing on Thursday.
Nice. And you're like, wait a second. I can do that. You're like, yeah, you can. Okay. You're like, I've never thought of that. You're like, all right, here we go. Just, it's all in front of you.
It's amazing how dumb we can be. And then we're just like, oh, I feel brilliant because I found the simplest of solutions, So,
yeah.
All right. I have a pop quiz for you. Did you say Sunday mass at this retreat?
I did say Sunday mass at the retreat.
All right. Do you remember the primary tip? You don't have to remember. I'm not asking you to recite your homily, but do you remember like the primary message from your homily? Because one, I have them pulled up, so I'll help you out if you need helping out. But two, I had a very good experience at mass this Sunday, which is not something I can say often.
Yeah. So, look at you.
So do you remember is the first question.
Do you remember? Yeah. So, it's a little different. I ended up giving two different Sunday Mass homilies because one was on retreat, and then I came back and had to say the 9 p.m. Mass anyway.
I see.
So I had to give two. But I remember both of them, and they both were on the Eucharist. So the first one on retreat, the main push was I drew a parallel from The Lord of the Rings, which is... talking about Frodo and Sam as they're at the base of Mount Doom and they're continuing on in their journey, and they basically collapse from exhaustion. And Sam reaches into his bag and pulls out a few leaves and opens them up, and he has some lembas bread, which is the bread of the elves that they gave them for the journey. So the lembas bread, or the elf bread, is way bread. It's food for the journey. So I started talking about how the Eucharist is food for the journey, or the viaticum, and it's our experience of the lembas bread that gives us the strength to continue on the journey, and kind of gives us that kind of encouragement and strength that we need even when we're completely exhausted, or we think that we're just covered in the shadows of Mount Doom in our life and things like that. So I talked about the Eucharist in that capacity. And then for the Sunday night mass, I kind of took a cue from earlier in the retreat where the sisters were encouraging us to give and to think about, even write down our own Eucharistic testimony. And it's something I like to do. I always try to at least take one Sunday mass a semester and preach about the Eucharist. And I always try to take one Sunday mass a semester and preach on confessions. So I took this as the opportunity to preach on the Eucharist and gave my own personal Eucharistic testimony for the Sunday night 9 p.m. Mass. So it wasn't necessarily based on the readings, and I know you had the readings pulled up and you were expecting me to figure it out, but man, I threw you the curveball and actually did. It's a rare occasion. I typically always preach on the gospel. In these rare occasions, I skipped out of that, dipped out of that, and did something a little different. So yeah,
I'll let it slide. Others might not, but I'll let it slide simply because you were on retreat. One, so sticking with the retreat theme is very, very good when you're preaching at a retreat. And
Tends
you were
to
on
be.
retreat all weekend, so not a ton of time to write 2 homilies. So I'm gonna let it slide. I really am.
Thank you so much. You're too kind.
No one has ever accused me of that, but I appreciate it.
No,
I also think it's.
I was going to say, what was
Good.
your homily about moving from first to last, or not asking to sit at the Lord's right hand? What were you going for?
So it's interesting. I had a good experience. I asked you if you remembered your homily. The answer was yes. Then you asked if I remembered the homily of the mass I attended. The answer is no. And yet I had a great experience nonetheless. So, ironically enough, our pastor, when he became our pastor, probably 3-ish years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
One of his first homilies was on lembas bread, and I remember it to this day because it endeared me to him so much that I'm like, I'm going to like this guy. And now yeah.
Man, I thought that was like an original thing that I came up with.
Oh, no. See, there's this thing called millennials and whoever's older than millennials, and every priest, I think, has mentioned it at some point.
Wow, you're just really chopping me down here. I thought it was all cool and creative.
I just let you slide. You got it. You want to take back calling me nice? Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. Just pull that back real quick. Ugh.
Yeah. So you mentioned not giving a homily on the homily. I often mostly connect when I am as a participant at Mass, and typically I'm most connecting with the gospel.
Mhm.
If it's not the gospel, typically it's the second reading, because like the Old Testament reading, it's just like, what is this story about old people from 3,000 years ago trying to tell me? And like, sometimes it's just hard. Sometimes it's really fun. It's just more hit or miss, I think, than like Paul's writings. It's typically like very practical.
No, I love this. I love this because I actually love the Old Testament readings, the first reading, because the first reading is almost always connected to the gospel. Yep. There's some kind of connection between first reading. And then the second reading is just like on its own kind of train tracks. So like you're following St. Paul's writings and things like that. And no, I've always found like I connect easier with the gospel in the Old Testament because they can be very, very vivid. And I just struggle with Paul's writings because he's just like writing letters to people. And I'm like, I don't know. I need some kind of imagination. I need a story to like picture in my head. And Paul's just like sitting there yelling at people. He's like, you stupid Galatians. And I'm like, whoa, okay, easy there, buddy. All right, like calm down. So it's funny because I struggle with Paul's writings, where you, on the other hand, you're like, I love this stuff. I don't give a rip about the Old Testament.
I think it's because it's more practical, right? So
yeah,
I'm going to you threw me a curveball. I'm going to throw you a knuckleball. You have no idea where this ball is going. So the one I really connected with, you are typically right. The Old Testament and the gospel typically connect. This time, the gospel was the curveball. The first reading, the psalm, and the second reading are all about Jesus' sacrifice and mercy. And then the gospel is just like the two apostles being like, can we be your right and left hand? Which is just like very different.
I love the intro. Jesus, do something for us. Okay, what do you want, buddy? Right. They're like, we want to sit at your right and left, please. I was like, oh my gosh.
Which is the funniest part of that story is that we want to sit on your right and left. But like Jesus has already said that I sit at the Father's right hand. So Jesus' left hand is the Father. So like they were asking to replace the Father, which is hilarious.
They're like, come on, bro. Like, learn your directions, like learn your right and left hand and make the connection here. Like it ain't gonna be you, okay?
Right. Actually, it's none of you. It's gonna be Peter. Leave me alone.
No, it's Our Lady. The Father's at his left, Our Lady's at his right.
Oh yeah, because he kicked Peter out. Peter's technically not in heaven. He's at the gate.
He's the bouncer.
Like, I called you Satan once. I'm not going to send you to hell, but you're gonna have 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot in the waiting room of heaven, whatever that place is.
Wherever
called.
that is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the one that really got me. So I came away from Mass.
Mm-hmm.
You talked earlier about like being reminded of the simplicities or like the core tenets of our faith.
Right.
And I have been frustrated in Mass for the last couple of months, and I've explained why on the show. People that have listened know what's been going on. But it's just been a very dry season. And because it's been a dry season, I haven't been as well fed, and that has led into a more, some of it is not my fault, but then it led to things that are my fault, right? So like,
Sure.
it's just not been the greatest time for me spiritually. And then I was just like, especially it was the Psalm that stuck out to me, which is typically the time that parents aren't paying attention, because that's when our kids, there's other noise, so the kids know that they can make more noise, but the Psalm, Lord, let your mercy be on us as we place our trust in you. And the musician was incredible. I don't know where they got her. She's not our normal musician, because she was very, very good. So I don't know where they got her, had this angelic voice, and it was just beautiful. And all of the the verses were all about how much the Lord is merciful to us. In the first reading, the Lord was pleased to crush him, Jesus, in infirmity. He gave his life as an offering for sin. It was just all about like the basic tenet. Like Jesus came, gave his life for you, and he wants to be merciful. So what I was hearing was like, stop beating yourself up over your sins, go to confession, and then like enjoy the benefits of Christ dying for you, right?
Yeah.
So I came away with just this incredible feeling of like, God's mercy is stronger than my sin. As long as I do the things that I'm asked to do, go to confession, try to avoid sin, all those kind of things. But just like, even that, it's just like, I'm still a person. So like, my sin, I often think, will outweigh how much God loves me, or God's mercy, or like, these sorts of things, when it was just a reminder of the incredible nature of Jesus' mercy. So like, I had an experience of the Lord, period, and an experience of the Lord in a church that I've been struggling to experience the Lord in for the last couple of months. So it was just very, very refreshing.
Nice. We love those types of things where the Lord kind of surprises us and, shows up right where we are. And you're like, oh, yeah, you still care about me, and you still show up wherever I end up. And I think that's just that, like, the fidelity to his promise that he's never going to abandon us. And I think we we write off certain places like, oh, well, this place is, this church that I haven't been able to experience him in the last, whatever months, years, or whatever. Like, it's never possible then. So like, I'm going to write this place off. Like, it's never going to be possible. And then he shows up, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, you can do pretty much anything, and you can walk through some closed doors and locked doors and things. And it's not up for me to write these places off, or write these opportunities or circumstances of my life off. It's like, you're still faithful, and you still pursue me, and you will have not abandoned me in that way.
Yeah, you're right. Because I wait for, if I'm in a period of dryness, I'm always like, oh, well, what's the next big thing? Is it Easter? Is it Pentecost? Is it Lent? Is it Advent? Is like, what's the next big thing? And I wouldn't have known this if I didn't look it up, but it was just the 29th Sunday in ordinary time. That's one of the pinnacle of my spiritual life in the year of our Lord 2024. So thanks, random Sunday.
We love that.
We really do. So, well, good. I'm glad things are going well with you and your students. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to play a little game. So don't go anywhere. This Friday, October 25th, is my 35th birthday. Hooray! And what I would like more than anything for my birthday is for you to support our mission here at Forte Catholic. Our big, audacious goal for this year is for us to receive $3,500 of donations for my 35th birthday. We're already knocking on the door with a very large and generous $2,000 gift. So I'm asking you to help us make up that difference. That's a little bit around half of a month's expenses for our organization. So we are essentially living paycheck to paycheck as an organization, and this $3,500 buffer would just give us exactly that, a buffer for when things get a little tight and a little slow. So if you want to give a one-time donation or join our monthly donation team, you can do all of that at fortecatholic.com/donate. That's fortecatholic.com/donate. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so all of your donations are tax deductible, and it's just very, very helpful to the ministry that we are doing here. So if you like Good Catholic Podcasts, if you want to support Catholic Ministries. This is a great way to do it and help me celebrate getting old, bald, balder, grayer, fatter. ForteCatholic.com/donate. Thanks so much in advance for your continued support. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I'm still Taylor Schroll. That's still Father Joseph Anthony Kress.
Got the hyphen in there.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. I'm going to change where the hyphen is for every introduction.
Joseph Anthony Kress. Yeah.
The last one's going to be Father Joseph Anthony Kress hyphen.
You figure it out. That's true. That's true.
We have a bunch of games here at Forte Catholic, and I figured you'd be down for any of them, which you were. But I gave you three primary suggestions, and as I was giving you one of the suggestions, you're like, oh, my students at the Catholic Center play this game with me already. So you are primed and ready for this game. So we're going to play a game called Freestyle Preaching, in which we will take turns giving each other 3 words that we then have to, on the spot, put into a real 60-second sermon, homily, whatever, right?
Yeah, sure.
And see if we can incorporate those 3 words well. And when I brought this up, you said, and I quote, oh, my students give me words to put into my homily every week. And my main question is, how is that allowed?
It's allowed because I allow it. That's why.
Right.
You know, it happens because I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. What do you want me to do? So I'll see. Sometimes I forget by the time I get up there. It's just like I forget. And I think it's allowed, and it happens because of my preaching style. Like I don't use notes. I won't say I don't prepare for the homily, because I do prepare my homilies, but I don't have written out homilies. So I give my preaching, I give the homily without notes. So I can always kind of weave something in last minute if I need to. I'm also very just like, I'm an extrovert beyond extroverts. And so like I need to be in the environment in preaching. So like sometimes I'm like, oh, I have this idea. And then I see the people and I'm like, that's not what they need, you know? And so I'll just switch things up or move it around. So yeah, it's possible because of kind of the style of preaching that I have, which is a little more, I don't want to say casual, but it's non-written out, and I can always make the adjustments on the fly when I need to.
Very good. Very good. So we're going to play. And my question for you is, would you like for me to give a 60-second sermon first, or for you to give the 60-second sermon first? What do you prefer?
Is it 60 seconds per word, or is it
60 seconds total,
and I got to
you have to include all the words into, and it could be a sermon about whatever you want. You just have to include those 3 words.
I see. I'm going to let you lead the way.
Okay. So what I need from you, sir, is 3 random words.
All right. Well, because I'm not super creative, I brought up a random word generator. So we're going to see how this goes. Oh, yeah. All right. So your first word is kettle.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This should be good. Second one's belief. That should be easy for you. And the third one is palace.
Palace. Okay. This is going to be so simple. Here we go.
Hit me with it.
Some of us struggle when it comes to belief, because faith is the evidence of things unseen. So it's harder to, it's like, I believe that there's a couch in front of me. I believe that I'm sitting here talking to you on a Zoom, but believing in a God that I can't see can be a little bit more difficult. And even for those of us who have been in the church for a long time, we might have believed yesterday, then something bad happens today. And, maybe we start to doubt a little bit. And if we don't address those doubts with trying to go to the Lord, try to get any questions that we have answered, it'll be kind of like a kettle where, you put the kettle on and it's not fully ready, but you can see it smoking. You can see evidence of the doubt. You can see evidence of something brewing, but then whenever that kettle gets hot enough, it's going to explode. And like, I don't want my life to explode, right? Like I want it to be where these times of doubt are fewer and farther in between. So if I want to go into the house that the Lord has made for me, and I'm a large guy, I'm going to need something like a palace. Like if I want to go to that place, anytime that I have doubt, I'm going to have to instead of letting the doubts be in the kettle, let my faith be in the kettle and grow to a point where my faith just explodes in love for him. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well played. I'm a large guy. I need a palace.
Good.
Smooth.
I need a palace. That was one of the homilies. I don't remember the homily that I heard yesterday, but I remember the one that I heard 15 years ago when I was in college.
Yeah.
It was the priest when I was in college. So it was someone like you. And he said that, like we are all temples of the Lord. And he's a very small, diminutive man. He's like, I am a temple. And he said the name of the pastor. He said, our pastor is like this church. And some of you are like cathedrals.
Subtle, real subtle out there.
Very, very good. I was like, yeah, I need to go confess gluttony because I am a cathedral of the Lord.
I'm a basilica.
Okay. It is your turn. And I too struggle to think of random words, but instead of using a random word generator, I'm like Brick Tamblyn from Anchorman. I'm just going to pick things that I see. So
yes, I love lamp.
Yeah, exactly. Your microphone is a Rode microphone, R-O-D-E. But I'm going to give you the word R-O-A-D, road.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
on the road,
like a path.
Gotcha. Yes.
I'm going to give you. I don't think it's what it is, but it looks like a lava lamp. So I'm going to give you lava lamp in the background, and then I'm also going to give you whatever the name of the thing that you're wearing as a Dominican is. What is the name of the thing that you're wearing?
A habit.
Habit. Okay. On your mark, get set, go.
One of the great images that we use for the Christian life is the fact that our life is a pilgrim journey. And it's a journey, right? You have a beginning point and you have a destination. Now, oddly enough, Aquinas talks a lot about the fact that our origin and our destination is the same. We come from God and we are returning back to God. Right? It's exitus reditus. Where we come from is actually where we're going. So we have to understand that this life is a journey along the road of returning back to God. And along that road that we may build up habits, right? Some of these are good habits of actions and practices, and some are bad habits that take us, maybe put barriers of our progress on the road. And sometimes that we have to remove those obstacles by focusing on building up good habits and virtues to keep us on the path, keep us on the road, but recognizing that the road has kind of twists and turns along. It's never just a super straight path, that life will kind of provide a different journey. And sometimes that we have to be malleable in following that road as it's laid out in front of us, always being confident that the Lord is, accompanying us along this road, but making sure that we don't try to force our path through it. Because sometimes when you force your way through a guardrail, you may end up in a ditch. So I think as we look at our pilgrim journey along the roads of this life and returning back to God, we need to allow ourselves to be kind of fluid or malleable, sometimes even like the liquid that's inside of a lava lamp that's constantly shape shifting or things like that. Noticing that it never breaks through that glass and overtakes something or is spilled out and no longer loses it, but it does shift and is a little more malleable to follow the path of life, being very, very confident that where the Lord has set us forth, he calls us back to himself. So this road of our life is always coming from God, but returning back to him in our life so that we can continue this journey, always being with the Lord, but never trying to force our own will upon the way, because that's where we end up, like I said, in a ditch or in crash in certain sense, but that we're constantly following the path that the Lord is accompanying us along the way with.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah, a little bit.
2.5 minutes, but
that makes sense.
That's the only drawback. But I will tell you, I like to talk very much. So that makes sense. Felt very much like I was at a real mass of yours for two reasons. One, because you have already confessed to us that you prepare for your homilies, but you don't write them out. Right. I could tell that, one, just out of the gun, you had me. When you said that our origin point and our end point are the same thing, that is a thought I have never thought about in that way before. Blew my mind. I'm like, that is incredible. And you just pulled that out of your habit. So
pull that out of my habit.
Exactly. The second thing is, because of the non-prepared nature, you repeated yourself a couple times. You made 3 very good points. You just made each of them 2 or 3 times where I was like,
Yes.
okay, I got it. We can move on, right? So,
Yeah.
but then I'm very impressed. I thought that I've like for a minute, the middle minute of the 2.5 minutes,
Yeah.
I forgot we were playing a game because it sounded like just something you would naturally say.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of understanding that when you give a homily and most people aren't taking notes and you're not handing out your outline in front of people, in order for them to like take a nugget away, you have to repeat it like 7 times before it sticks in the auditor's brain. So I repeat I'm like Milli Vanilli up in the pulpit. I'll just repeat myself again and again and again. So yeah, that's why you heard me repeat the phrases again and again, because that's just where I don't know. I land on that reality quite often that you have to repeat yourself almost 7 times in a talk before your listeners will walk away with it.
We are so old. I love that you are working with Gen Z and you just made a Milli Vanilli reference.
Yeah. Well, that was for me.
Talking.
Like that was just for me. Okay. Whenever I make
Everybody's
jokes
like,
and stuff, I tell my students, I'm like, I make the jokes for me. Whether you laugh at them or not, I could care less. That one was for me.
Right. And then the it's funny because you made a Milli Vanilli reference. I thought about Cotton Eye Joe whenever you were talking, because you were like, where did you come from? Where did you go? We came from, and we're going to the Lord. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to stick in my head forever now. Every time I hear Cotton Eye Joe now, I'm
you just ruined that
you.
song. Thank you. Yeah, well done.
No, I didn't ruin it. I made everyone think about the Lord during that stupid song.
True.
Right.
True.
That was like eerily good. Like I feel like that's a real homily for you. We're gonna do this one more time each. So I need 3 words from you, my friend.
All right, back to the generator. Here we are.
Okay.
We're gonna go with relaxation.
Okay.
Doll. And dough.
Dope. Okay. When I go to mass or I go to maybe pray in adoration or whatever, a lot of times one of the big things that when I feel consolation from the Lord is this bit of relaxation. Like I feel God's peace, and it's like it's not the primary reason why I go to church, why I go to prayer, but I tell you what, it is something that I'm absolutely grateful for, because we all live these busy lives, and I have kids running everywhere, I have work things going all the time, and it's just good to go to the Lord and find that relaxation. My daughter's birthday was just the other day, and she asked for stuffies, like stuffed animals or whatever. And she asked for that from everybody. So she ended up getting 9 of them, which is just absolutely ridiculous, but she loves them. It's what she wanted, and they make her so happy. And she'll bring me these dolls and she'll be like, look, can you hold them? And it's like, it's not something that's important to me, but it's something that's important to her, right? So I'll hold on to it and I'll act like it's something that's really important to me because it makes her happy. And a lot of times when we go to prayer, it's like I'm not bringing my best and the Lord isn't impressed by what I'm bringing him, but he's just like, look, you care about this thing and I care about you, so I'm going to give you this gift, which is exactly like me holding on to my daughter's stuffed animal, her doll, right? And there's just so many times when we're doing things correctly. There's other times where we make mistakes. And she asked me to hold the doll. And I'm like, I'm busy and I don't have time for you. And I'm like, I realize it after when she walks away sad. I'm like, dope, like Homer Simpson from that show. But like, I want to be a better father than him. So it's just a reminder to me that, one, to be a better father, but also that we have like the perfect father in heaven that's not like me, and he's not going to. Whenever we come to him, he's not going to say, no, I don't have time for you. He's going to say, yeah, come here, my son. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Preach it, brother. Preach it.
I feel like that went too long. I was inspired by you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're taking a page out of my book out here going long.
All right. Well, I took a page out of your book. I might have opened the door for you because we're going to let the viewers and the listeners decide on who wins. So I think I've left the door open. I don't think I was at my best today. So you have one more chance. I picked things from your room earlier. Now I'm going to pick things from my room that you might not have such attention to. So I'm going to give you the words PS5, like PlayStation 5. Okay. I'm also going to give you the word backpack because I'm also looking at that. And I'm also going to give you the word water. The word water, the word backpack, and the word PS5. On your mark, get set, go.
one of my favorite, I don't want to say attributes or aspects of the faith is, but one of my favorite things to see in the faith is how the Lord uses water. He uses it multiple times. You look at the Old Testament, right? You see that he splits the Red Sea. He opens up the waters in that sense. He has water come rushing out of the rock as well. And then the New Testament, he takes water and he turns it into wine. But one of the things that we have to understand in life is that in our relationship with the Lord, he gives us these things, but we always have to be kind of cognizant that there are good things in life, but there are also things that we can have too much of a good thing. And I think water is a great example of that, right? We need water for sustenance. We need water for our life. Like you can be very dehydrated, get headaches, and even die from lack of water. But there are times that you can actually have too much water. You can drown by intaking so much water. And I see a lot of times that there's a struggle in life that we want to grow our relationship with the Lord by just doing more and more pious practices. And as if that's enough to have a relationship with the Lord. And maybe sometimes there's too much in that sense of the pious practices that overshadow or take us away, maybe even kill the relationship that we have with the Lord. There needs to be a healthy balance in that. Understanding that when we approach the Lord, we want to have this life-giving water. He says springs of living water will flow from within us. And that when we go through that process of a deeper relationship with the Lord, that he lets the water flow from without of us. And so we don't need to think that we need to carry all of this goodness and water amongst ourselves. Like so we put it on a backpack and carry it along with us, but it's the springs of living water that flow from without. And that it's new life in that sense. And to not be afraid that the depths of a relationship may involve certain pious practices, but we don't want to overdo it, right? If you take water out of its proper context and you kind of pour it on your PS5, it'll fry it and kill it. So that we have to have a healthy balance of an intimate personal relationship with the Lord, but also express that through our pious practices. And if we do that in the proper balance, then it will truly breathe the springs of living water that draw us into eternity.
All right. We're just going to cut my my response from earlier and put it right here because I feel the exact same. Very good. Like I feel like I got actual real things out of that to apply to my life, and yet it went way too long. Which is
you talk to my students, and that's a typical experience of my preaching. There it is.
Yeah. So you are very good at this game. Yeah, exactly. But I feel like Father Anthony is always talking about when people complain about the homily being too long. What they're saying is that it was bad. It was too long for this game, and yet I was still intrigued through everything that you were saying. So you're doing something right. So we're going to let people decide on YouTube. Give a comment for Father Joseph Anthony wins. You can put the hyphen wherever you want, or you could say Taylor wins. You can put the hyphen wherever you want.
Wherever you want. Well. Yeah, exactly.
Figure out where that goes. And we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about some experiences that I've been having and the difference between adults and kids when it comes to asking questions about the faith. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We are 3 weeks into our brand new apologetics series. You can watch all 3 of those videos right now on our YouTube channel with 5 more videos to go every Wednesday over the next 5 weeks. In the first week, we did an introduction to apologetics, what it is, and how to best share the gospel. The next week, we did the proofs for God's existence. And last week, we did faith and science. All 3 of those videos right now are on youtube.com/Forte Catholic in our apologetics playlist. You can check those out. You can watch whichever ones you like. You can hit play on the whole playlist and they will just go. We hope that you enjoy those. It seems like people have been reaching out more on those videos than more of our other videos saying that they enjoyed them. So I hope that you do enjoy them. This is a ministry that my pastor asked me to do for our local parish, and we're hitting record so that people at our parish that miss it can stay caught up, but also so that you can watch them from wherever you are. So fortecatholic.com/YouTube or youtube.com/Forte Catholic. Both of those will get you to our Catholic Apologetics series. Enjoy. Welcome back. I'm Taylor-Schroll, and that is Father Joseph Anthony Kress OP. No punctuation whatsoever. I noticed during the break that there are 5 points of punctuation in your name. You have 3 periods, a hyphen, and a comma in your name. I have none. That's so impressive.
Well, 2 periods, a comma, and a hyphen. And nobody has ever brought up
FR dot O dot P dot.
Oh, yeah. Never. I forgot about the FR.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm like a freaking high school English textbook out here. So many. Should I put a semicolon? What would semicolon usage be like in a religious name?
You do have a colon, but that's a different conversation. All right. So one of the things that I have noticed is, I started working in youth ministry, and now I'm doing more adult ministry. And when I do youth ministry, one of the big things that I learned was that I could give the best talk on the Eucharist that I could. Or I could give the best talk on whatever that I could, and they don't care because a lot of them don't care because if they already have questions about whether God exists or if God even loves them or if why does the church hates X, Y, and Z group, if that's what they're coming in with, they don't care about the Eucharist or they don't care about my talk on prayer because they have these questions. So I started doing question and answer sessions, and what I was noticing the first few times that I did it is that it made the rest of the retreat a lot more beneficial because they were like, oh, if my questions about God's existence or if God loves my gay friend or my parents that got divorced or whatever, then I can actually dive into the retreat. So what I learned about young people's questions is there is always a question behind the question. So then when they would ask,
very much so,
like, what is Jesus' teaching on divorce? What they're asking is, does God love my mom and dad and my step parents? Like, if they're asking why does the church hate gay people, they're wondering how to interact with their friend at school that's gay and that sort of thing, right? And I actually love that about them, right? Once I learned that, like, I love just the honesty of the questions, and like a lot of times they would get the questions and they would be sufficient, and they'd be like, okay, I'm ready to dive into this. I have had a very different experience when I've been working with adults. And this isn't all kids and not all adults, but it is the primary thing.
Right.
When I've been given talks to adults and we get to a Q&A session, 2 things primarily happen. One, there is no question asked whatsoever. They're just making a statement. And a lot of times it is in contradictory to something that I said during my talk. So it's
just their opportunity to like challenge you and counteract you, or to, oh, thank you so much for saying, I believe blah, 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 blah. And they just then pontificate on their own kind of blah, blah, blah.
So they're pontificating either way, whether it's in agreement with me or disagreement with me. It's not helpful. Like, it's not what the Q&A session is for. Like, I don't mind hearing other people's opinions, but that's not what everyone else is there for. So like, if I'm doing a talk at a church that is going to have Q&A, the people in the crowd, in the congregation, are there to hear someone speak and to get their questions answered, not to hear someone who it wasn't asked to be there give a 5-minute talk. Right. So that gets frustrating and it's kind of hard to handle. The second thing is when a question is asked that is just so it's like dripping with hatred. It drives me nuts because it's just kids don't ask questions like that, right? They're not. They're kinder about it. But like the amount of times that a question starts with, well, when Pope Francis, and I'm just like, you can hear my eyes rolling. Like, it's always anti-Pope Francis, or it's anti whatever the pastor is doing at their local church, or it's just there's so much venom behind these questions. And like, and so it's frustrating, but 2, I had this realization. I haven't fully worked through it, but I had the same realization when I was with kids. I would hear them ask questions, and then the realization after a few months or a couple of years doing this is the whole question behind the question thing. And that's what I learned. And I was able to be better as a minister, as a pastoral person, not a pastor, but a pastoral person in these ministries, to be better. And I just don't know how to best deal with the Venom situation, because it's happened enough, and all it really does for me is it makes everything awkward, and it makes me not want to do Q&A with this group anymore. That's really what happens. But I'm like, that's not the most pastoral thing probably either. No. So I don't know. Thoughts. That's just what I've been dealing with.
Yeah. I think, the situations that you bring up are like very common, whenever we give talks in adult situations or things, just because adult life is complicated. Mm-hmm. Like adult life is complex. It really, really is. And so, everybody has their own experiences. And for what I have found is typically a lot of these individuals, once again, I mean, we're painting with very, very broad strokes here, but a lot of these individuals who have such of, let's say, prickly approach to them when they ask these questions in large environments, it's partly because they don't have anybody else to talk to. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have their own sounding board. They don't have their own friends or family who share the faith that they can kind of like work through some of this. And so what ends up happening is the only other voices that they have are the internet, which is radical and can fire them up, or, other kind of media sources, social media or things like that, that feed into the venom. And so what ends up happening is they've been having this conversation, they've been rolling these things around in their own head, and they've never actually given voice to it, whether with a friend or in a different setting. And they may be the only person in their life who believes. They may be the only person in their life context that has a faith or wrestles with these things. And because they've never actually spoken to it or had other people in their lives that they can actually speak honestly and openly and vulnerable about some of these things, then when they have that opportunity, they take it with like gusto, and it comes off like really sharp, and it comes off with venom. So I think what I have found, like I said, I'm very much painting with broad strokes here. But I found that typically those individuals, because there's actually a void in their life, and it's a void of authentic friendships. So maybe approaching them, with a little more kind of gentle nature. Now, that doesn't mean dismissing it, and that doesn't mean allowing it to happen the way it did. There have been times where, we've had town hall sessions with our students, and somebody, pontificates and makes a statement. I remember years ago when I first started doing campus ministry, we did a town hall, and there was a student that was like, we need to have confession every single day. Like, we have so many priests here. Why can't we have it every day? And I just shot right back at him. And I said, do you need confession every day? Or do you want confession every day? Because if you need it every day, then there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're probably in some kind of addiction of sin. And also, do you just want confession every day so that you can have the license to sin whenever you want and know that the sacrament's there? Like, the sacraments are not on demand. Like, you have a canonical right to access to the sacraments, but you don't have a right to on-demand sacraments.
That's a good point.
And if you're approaching the Lord in that way, on demand, then something else is wrong. So, like, there was a way that, like, sometimes, like, if somebody is making some, like, really broad or, like, really forceful statements like that, I'll just call it out. Because it's like, if you want to make a public statement like that, then that gives me every right to publicly call you out on this.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, don't get upset and hurt by that. Like, you've said this publicly, and then I'm very comfortable calling that out. And I think, once again, I deal with a little bit of a different demographic. These are young adults. These are kids who are becoming adults. And so they kind of, need to learn some of these harsh factors in different venues or things like that. But I think, having in the back of my head that, like, is this somebody who, really doesn't have a robust social life or a life that is, spiritually rich, where they have friends to talk about the faith with, or they have family or anybody else. So being a little more cognizant of the context in that way, but then not being afraid to say, like, okay, if you made this public statement, then I'm going to publicly challenge you. This is not an open forum for you to just publicly pontificate. And if you don't want a public challenge, then maybe don't make that kind of statement. And also, with aspects of social media, people think that they can say anything whenever, wherever, and they've lost the prudence to know the right time and place. And so maybe there are times where I will actually shut down a conversation if somebody is asking something. I'm saying, I'm sorry, that is not for this venue. Like, that is not for this conversation. What you're asking is a very nuanced thing, and you're making broad, you're making very, very strong claims on something that is much more delicate or something like that. And I'm happy to have that conversation, but this is not the venue for that. So I'd love to talk to you afterwards, but, like, we need to stay on topic for the, whatever the question, whatever the, topic was, or something like this, because I think people have lost the context that there's prudence in knowing the time and place and when to ask certain questions and when to have certain conversations. Maybe an open forum isn't the right venue to have more nuanced conversations about something. And we can talk about kind of broad principles, but, the very specifics of it, maybe an open forum isn't the right place to deal with that. And so like I will shut that down and say, okay, now's not the time. I'm happy to have that, but not in this venue and not in this way. And that's not me avoiding it, but that's just me understanding some of these dynamics and understanding everybody else in the room that is like, oh, this is weird. This is tense. So I think those are some of the initial things that, like, given the situations that you just presented, that would be kind of how I would approach some of it. I do think there's another situation where we deal with people that we disagree with. And what I'm going to kind of talk about is, like, how do I deal with somebody that I disagree with? And
all right, hold on. You're pontificating. Hold on. This isn't the place of the four. One moment. Let's test this out.
Yeah.
Let me respond to what you said, and then I'll let you pontificate again.
Please.
There was a part of me that I thought you were testing me. I was like, he's just going to keep going until I stop him, isn't he?
Kind of. I wanted to see how long this was going to go, and I was like, we'll see. I'll see.
Well, we'll talk about the disagreement in a second, but the two things that you said that make me feel better in different ways. One, like I was talking just pastorally, my heart for the kids was softened whenever I realized that there's a question behind the question. I hadn't gotten to the part where my heart had softened for people because it was more of a frustration that I wasn't frustrated for me. I was frustrated for the other people in the congregation,
right,
in the group. You're not here for this, and I'm the person in charge, and this is weird, right? But you gave me a heart for this is the only place that they can talk about these things. And I think you're probably right. And a lot of the situations that are popping into my head of times when this has been difficult, that is probably the case in a large majority of those. Second, it made me feel better for the times that I have shut it down. Because honestly, man, I've worked with kids for so long that shutting kids down is so easy for me. I'm bigger than you. I'm older than you. I'm louder than you. Like, I can shut this down easily, but it is a respect thing from me for people who are 10 years older, double my age, triple my age, almost triple my age in some of these scenarios where it feels weird to shut it down, but it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that made me feel better. Okay, now you can go on again about the people you disagree with.
Thank you. Yeah, no, in well played, putting the skills into action immediately. We love that.
I saw you smirk, and I'm like, I think he's doing it on purpose.
I was like, I want to see, because I do have thoughts, but I also wanted to see how you're going to play that.
That's funny.
I think, we talked about disagreements and things. And I think, there's another situation where it's like maybe you have a one-on-one conversation with somebody that you very much disagree with. And I've always found that in those conversations, trying to take a step back and get back to foundational things that you agree on with the other person. Because I think we disagree with conclusions a lot, and we fight on those conclusions and don't establish a rapport and don't establish like a common agreement from which to figure out where you diverge.
Right.
So if we starting from the divergence and try to say like, whoa, I'm going to try to convince you over to my side. So many of these conversations with disagreements will just revolve around winning the person over to my argument, winning the person over to my side. And that is never helpful. Everybody then is starting from a defensive position. And so it's like, let's actually establish some common agreements. Like, let's take a step back, because what we are arguing about are conclusions. Now, there's a whole list of things that build so that I can reach that conclusion. So let's find some of those common agreements and then slowly work to where we find the disagreement.
Right.
And when you can do that, you can actually really work with a person and say, okay, now I found where the disagreement is. I believe this, you believe that. Let me hear why you believe that. And that's the question that starts to establish that. I will always work with somebody that's like, okay, we differ on our conclusions. I would love to hear why you have got to that conclusion. Like, I want to know. Like, I have my own reasons on why I got to the conclusion I got to, but I don't know yours. And I trust you're a smart person. You have your reasons. So I would just like to hear your reasons, and not like, you need to explain yourself. Right. But just like, I want to hear the reasons why you got to the conclusions you did. Yeah. And I'm happy to share the reasons I got to the conclusion I have, but let's go back and find some of that common agreement and then figure out some of those other points of friction or points of divergence in that sense.
Yeah, I think the two things go hand in hand, both with the questions and with the disagreements. Is like just not leading with the venom. Like
Yeah.
as adults, we can have a little bit more prudence and try to find the common ground. I was listening to a podcast the other day, because we're in election season, and like
Right.
within the church, people are always very venomous about their side of the church, their opinion, that sort of thing. But it's this podcast called The Happiness Lab by Dr. Lori Santos. She's a professor at Yale that's been running this happiness course for many years at Yale, and I love the podcast. I've talked about it on the show before, but she was telling the story about people that disagree. So essentially, they were going to get two people that disagree. The two primary things, because it's election season, they were talking about gun control and abortion. So they got two people that were like vehemently pro-gun, anti-gun, vehemently pro-abortion, anti-abortion, and they were like, "We're going to." What they told the two participants was there's going to be a moderator on the call. So if you and I were on the call, there'd be a moderator that would step in if things got too venomous, right? So these two strangers. So people guessed, hearing that situation. They also polled people on how they thought this would go. So there were the participants in the study, and then people guessing how the study would go. So people guessed that there would be screaming matches, and that the average was 25% of them would need intervention from the moderator. That was the guess. 25% of the conversations, which I actually think is kind of low. If you get somebody that's like very red, very blue, very pro-gun, very anti-gun, I would probably have guessed higher, closer to 50-50. The guess was 25%, the average. You know how many of those conversations needed the moderator? Zilch. Zero.
Wow.
Zero needed the moderator, because people actually are willing to talk to each other. But we, like you were talking about social media, we're so used to just yelling things and not having a person across from us talking, right? It would be much easier for me to say terrible things about you and block you on Twitter so you can't see them. It would be much more difficult for me to say them here, and much more difficult for me to say them to your face, like in your campus ministry with your students, around you. Like that'd be very, very much harder. So they mostly just shared stories. And like, this is what you were talking about why do you believe what you do, right? There was one person that was that was pro-gun, and the anti-gun person asked them why, and it's like, because the elderly 80-year-old mom lived alone and wanted to feel safe, so he's pro-gun so that his mom could own a gun. There was one gay man who said that he was originally opposed to guns, but then he got death threats against him because he was gay, so he bought a gun. So like, just because of situations, he actually changed his mind and was able to share that with somebody. So they share these stories, and the most common response, they also polled the participants after. 100% of them said that they enjoyed the conversation, which again, like there's no way I would have guessed that, right? 100% said that they enjoyed the conversation, and many of them said that they would invite the other person over for coffee or a drink. Like, it's incredible the assumptions that we have about conversations how conversations would go with people that we disagree with, and then you actually do it and people are like, hey, I actually kind of like you want to come over?
You're not a bad person,
right?
It's like, they're not a bad person. Very few people are completely evil, if any,
right? And the ones that are have a lot of punctuation in their names. Oh, good.
Yes, exactly.
We did it, Priest. We did a podcast together. I am thankful.
I think so.
I am thankful. Well, how can people stay connected with you? You're also on another podcast. You exist on the internet. How can people support what you're doing?
If they're interested in the campus ministry here at the University of Virginia, I would say check out Catholic Who's. And that's HOOS. We're on social media platforms, and our website is catholichwhos.org. And then, as you mentioned, I'm on another podcast with classmates of mine, Dominican friars. That is Godsplaining. So you can check out Godsplaining on all the social media apps and all the podcast apps wherever you listen or watch your podcast. We are on all of those platforms. So check out Godsplaining. We also have in-person events. So if you'd like to join us for a day of reflection or a retreat, you can check out godsplaining.org, where you'll find merch, live event information, and then our latest episodes. So I would say that those are the different ways to stay in touch with all the happenings that I'm engaged in right now.
Well, good. Well, fat hyphen her. I'm glad that you were here. I'm glad that we had this conversation. And maybe we'll do it again before 2 years and 1 month from now.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that.
All right. Thank y'all for listening. I'll be back next week. He'll be back sometime in the next year. See ya. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode of Forte Catholic. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, what are you doing? Hit subscribe. And if you're on the podcast, leave a 5-star review. It takes 15 seconds. Hit the 5 stars. Write one sentence saying, Father Joseph Anthony Kress is good. Don't worry about where you put the hyphen. It doesn't matter. We're very clear about that. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell, leave a comment. All of those things help this show to grow. Y'all are the best. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.